right, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, welcome to the Wild Ventures and Momentum Cyber Fireside Chat. I'm your co-host, Yoav Leidersdorf of Wild Ventures. We are an early-stage VC fund investing mostly in Israeli cybersecurity, based in Silicon Valley. All Wild Ventures people, please raise your hands. There's 14 of us, so thank you very much. All Momentum Cyber people, raise your hands. Very good. All right, great. We'll start with some introductions. All right, so actually I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves. So that's okay. We'll start with you, Dave.
How long do I have?
20 seconds.
Oh, darn, that's hard. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? You guys good? Yeah. I mean, 8:30 keynote, fireside chat while having wine. Does it get any better than this? Yeah. All right, my name's Dave DeWaltz. I'm founder of Night Dragon, which is an investment advisory firm. I'm also involved with Eric at Momentum and a few other companies as well. I used to be the CEO of Fireside. I used to be the CEO of McAfee and a few other companies. So been in cyber for almost 20 years and looking forward to chatting. So here we go. That was only 19 seconds.
How do I follow that? Not only hype man. Oh, God. Justin Semani, CSO of SAP, physical security product enterprise globally. Yeah.
7 seconds.
How do I follow? Eric McAlpine, I'm the founder and managing partner of Momentum Cyber. We are the world's first and only exclusively focused investment bank on cybersecurity. This industry is near and dear to my heart. That's where I started out in traditional investment banking at bigger banks, Blackstone, Citigroup before that, and ran the security practice at those firms, and saw that there was a huge hole and big need to service and be of counsel to cybersecurity companies, big, medium, and small, public and private, venture capital, private equity, et cetera, et cetera. And so decided to just do it myself. With Dave's help.
We got a mic there. I'm Andy Ellis. I'm the Chief Security Officer of Akamai. I make the internet suck less. To trump all that.
Galina Antelva, I'm the co-founder of Clarity, where we're trying to reinvent how industrial cybersecurity works, because that's one of the new frontiers of cybersecurity. Before that, I was with Siemens for a number of years trying to figure it out, and that's how I got the inspiration that we have to build a new company. And I'm not Israeli, and my partners are Israeli, and I have to say that I'm just in love with the Israeli ecosystem, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. You guys are the best, and that's why I'm here. So.
Thank you very much, Galina.
You guys won a lot of points with that one.
Absolutely. And just before I go into the first question, I want to mention we just put out this really cool thing about 24 hours ago. Our CTO, Idan Nino, right here, created a cyber map, cybermap.co. Cyber on your phones. All right, let's go. Ready?
I don't have access to that.
This program is brought to you by... All right, the cybersecurity market grew from $3.5 billion in 2004 to $138 billion in 2017, 39x growth, 33% CAGR. Cybersecurity products and services will exceed $1 trillion cumulatively from 2017 to 2021. Cybercrime is expected to cost the world $6 trillion in 2021, up from $1 trillion in 2012. Security labor shortage, 3.5 million unfilled positions by 2021. And cybersecurity alerts, 92% of companies get more than 500 alerts per day. So things are going well, huh?
They're going.
Wow, how did I start with that? Well, I'll start with this. You know, it's been fun to have a front row seat to the cyber world. I mean, just for 2 decades. How many have been in the cyber industry for more than 10 years? How many people here came from 8200? Yeah, now we're talking. All right. So, you know, it's been interesting to watch. And as Yoav said, you know, this industry, when I first got into it, was a $3 billion market, which is pretty big. But to now watch it just 15 years later or so be a $100 billion market, it's pretty amazing. And, you know, the comment that I usually make is, you know, may we live in interesting times. You know that saying, you know, it's sort of like a curse and an opportunity at the same time. And you just watch all this dislocation of offense and defense that's going on. and you track threat cycles to customer spending, to vendor cycles, and you watch those things change over 15 years. And if you're really good at being an entrepreneur, and you can figure out what the next greatest dislocation of offense and defense is, it's got the greatest exploitability from capitalism. And my company, FireEye, what I saw at one point with FireEye was an APT threat that was coming around, advanced persistent threats, and not many people were able to solve detecting and preventing multi-staged, multi-vectored attacks that were being used. We invented some products to do it. We leveraged it. We raised almost $2 billion of capital in a 3-year period. I don't recommend that for everybody. But we hired about 4,000 people. We went from almost 0 to $1 billion in sales. And what I always teach is know your window, know your threat. And it's amazing to watch the cycles that go on. And for my opinion, it's just never ending. This cyberspace domain that we're seeing is incredible. It's a domain like none other before in history, and it has elasticity to be around for the rest of our lives and then some. So, it creates an opportunity. It's a great mission to solve a major problem in the world, but also a great opportunity to make money too. So I've been very fortunate for a lot of that. I just absolutely love it. I invest in as many companies as I possibly can that can solve those problems and advise them. And as Galena mentioned, industrial is one of them, social networks, anything that I can find that really have a big cyberspace problem I'm after, anti-droning, satellite issues, you name it, I'm focused on. And I just love what I do, so sorry. There you go.
So I don't sell anything.
You buy a lot.
I buy a lot. Wow, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. I think we're getting above 25 years that I've been doing security. And it's been fascinating watching it come from that one guy that manages a firewall or runs Ballista, cybersecurity scanner, and now we have an industry that spans yeah, you remember that one. That spans products that focus on areas that we've never seen before. Back when we started security or information security, we never thought that we're dealing with MLATs on how we're taking down organized crime or state-sponsored criminals across the globe. And how do you facilitate that with public policy? How do you facilitate that with government affairs teams within your organization? How do you drive information to supply those individuals on how many attacks are you seeing and how do you respond? Focusing on application security, infrastructure, and the like, the span of what security really is has grown tremendously over the past, mostly 15, 16 years, but absolutely since I've been doing it. But what I think is interesting is that we have a lot of participants in the security market, but not all of them are adding a lot of value. And so when we see on the buy side, not from a banking perspective, but from a purchaser and supplier perspective, there's a deep, deep need on innovative solutions in these core components of what we see in information security, whether it's infrastructure, application security, governance, and the like. We don't really see a lot of innovative ideas. And then secondarily, how do you market those ideas? How do you go to market to them to really be able to sustain and build an appropriate business, regardless of what region they are? And so to that point, it's been fascinating to see this overall business or industry that has really unfolded, but we still see very boutique companies that really come and really stay there instead of becoming the powerhouses that McAfee and others have really become. And I think we're in that consolidation phase over the past couple of years, but we'll continue on. But we still need to see that innovation coming into them. So places like Israel is huge, considering that, is it the leading region? Second region for cybersecurity companies. What's the first one? The U.S.? That's not really.
50 states. That doesn't count.
It doesn't count. California, maybe. Anyways, so to that point, events like this are fantastic to really help grow not just overall market cap, but how do we actually solve the problems that we need to solve for the protection of everybody around the globe.
It's a good segue into where I was going to go with this conversation, because I'm the finance guy, I like numbers, I have a couple engineering degrees.
In the middle,
Right in the middle.
Bankers in the middle. It's perfect for track.
Right where we should be. Yeah, thanks for having me on this panel, first of all. I feel like overshadowed by this the talent here. Folks that are really, truly evolving this industry and taking it forward. And I just have a small role in this in terms of being of counsel in those critical moments, whether that's taking a Series B term sheet or selling the company, right? And being able to do that with empathy and innovation and objectivity is where I sit. And so over the years, as the last 10 years as I've been tracking the space, it started out as a place where if you only did cybersecurity at an investment bank, you were going to get fired. I mean, that was just not, and there was not enough market cap, to your point, to do that. To the point where now we have an independent investment bank with a team that comes in and speaks one language and one language only. And we really, truly want to understand what those 3,000 vendors are and which ones are innovating and which ones aren't. It is consolidating, that's for sure. There was $30 billion of market cap, I think, when Dave took over as McAfee's CEO. And today, public market cap of the 30 high growth and low growth companies that we track that are pure play cybersecurity companies is about 131 billion. But there's a shadow market cap out there that you need to be aware of, and that's the security business within Oracle, the $3 billion on-prem business that's got a $300 million cloud business that was zero a few years ago. There's a big captive Cisco business, $2.5 billion. So if you take all that combined, and then you take the market cap of the private companies, the companies that have been taken private, we're now over 250 billion. We're getting up to close to $300 billion of market cap. We need more buyers. And with our firm's help, we're bringing them in. We've worked with ADT, 143-year-old company that has been protecting physical borders for that long and needs to protect our digital assets. And if you'll read the S1, that's when they went public. They're backed by Apollo, a private equity firm. 14 mentions of cybersecurity.
Eric, you were listing, Cisco and Oracle, these non-security companies, and you left somebody out.
I almost said it while you were talking.
600 million in recurring security revenue. So I think the challenge with numbers like that, right, that you have just gave to us, is half of them you should not believe. When we talk about how much money is lost, right, this analyst guessing at that. Or how many average alerts per company, I totally believe that number, but boy do they need to tune down their false positive rates. Some opportunities there. But I think one of the challenges we have is historically we've thought of cyber or security or information security, pick your favorite one, as sort of this separate discipline, right? It sits out in the wilderness. We raise Jedi, and they're special people. They come in and they can identify the good and the bad, and everything's attacker versus defender. On this side you have the Death Eaters, and on this side you have Dumbledore's army, and it's going to be really easy to figure out what's happening. And the reality is that security is happening every day at every moment in our lives, and it doesn't change when we go online. It just happens that the ways in which it can go bad become much easier. And the consequences for it going bad are amazing. Like consider, when you're in a private venue, comedians talk about this, right? That they used to, when they would try out new jokes, they would go to private comedy clubs and they would try out their jokes and they would fail like 30 days in a row. They would tell jokes, they were a little too over the top, they would fall flat, whatever it was. And now they do that and there's somebody in the audience with a camera or with their phone, videos it, puts it on YouTube. Well, now they no longer have that security of being able to fail in private. Their failures become public. And in the same way, if you're Sony and you send an email around between executives detailing the horrible practices that you have, when those were handwritten notes on Post-its, that was okay. But when somebody breaches it and it's disclosed, now we all kind of know, why there's a gender problem at Sony, or in Hollywood, in similar ways that we have a gender problem in the security community. Because we believe that security is just about combat, rather than security being about guiding every aspect of our company's lives into a safer world, which requires people from lots of backgrounds to be able to sort of bring those forces to bear. So lots of opportunities for us. We should just be careful about quoting all of our numbers and treating them as fact, although some of those are fantastic.
Is your second career coming?
Not the way I tell jokes.
Okay, so as the token entrepreneur on the panel, let me maybe give you some advice on how you sell to folks like Justin and Andy. So I have to say the current landscape of cybersecurity, numbers or no numbers aside, is pretty exciting because of the new areas in which cybersecurity is taking us, right? So all the connectivity that we're seeing, whether that's inside of the vehicles, whether that's satellite, whether that's IoT, industrial cybersecurity, those are the new frontiers where you can actually create something pretty innovative that is serving an area where there's no one, right? Because those are the best situations are where you don't have to go and displace a SIM for a better behavioral tool, where you can actually go and provide technology that does not exist. And so there's plenty of opportunity in those areas. The folks that are coming from the Army units are pretty innovative, and the one advice that I've gotten from many CISOs and chief security officers is, if you're selling me something that's in the traditional domain, you have to show me how you're going to replace 3 products with the product that you're bringing on board. Whereas if it's a new frontier of something that they do not have visibility over, I think that makes the sale a little bit easier. That being said, I never want to be a CISO. I feel pretty sorry for you guys with the number of just pitches that you get bombarded on a daily basis. But the market also shows that there's a great opportunity for smaller companies to actually innovate. And from my own experience, I think that especially for the Israeli kind of cyber landscape, if you want to be successful, you really need to think about how you can partner with some of the large companies. They really accelerate your go-to-market capabilities and kind of give you the validation that just a regular startup cannot do. So, my 2 cents.
That's great, thank you. So I want to tell you, we're trying a new format tonight for the questions, right? So we usually had mics going around. We figured social media could help us. So if you want to post a question, just go to LinkedIn on the Wild Ventures page. There's a poster about this event, and you just add a comment, and I'll see it on my phone, and then I'll ask the question, and we'll see how that works. Next question to you guys. There's already a few questions on there. It's going to work.
Is it a robot creating the software to ask the question?
No, it's actually our team posting the questions. No, I'm kidding. So at Wild Ventures, which we are a cybersecurity-focused VC, we believe that there are really only 2 types of good investment opportunities right now. One is what we call greenfield, blue ocean sectors, where a new industry gets created, and security is an afterthought, but an important afterthought, and then startups get created and we fund those. So we did that in connected and autonomous vehicles, we did it in connected medical devices, we did it in virtual containers. Then the other type of good opportunities to invest are basically looking after the CISO and their organization, right? So things like incident response, vulnerability management, asset discovery, visualization and manipulation, simplify your security stack, seamless integration across your tools. So we're constantly looking for these 2 types of investment opportunities all the time. That's what we do. And we've made, those are the investments we've made. So my question to you, and this is a tip to Wild Ventures, what are some greenfield blue ocean type investment opportunities that you are seeing or are thinking of? And what are some opportunities that that you're thinking of where we could maybe find opportunities for helping the CISO manage their life?
Is it a green field or a blue ocean? Which one? Okay.
When you're drowning.
So in 3 minutes or less, I'm going to tell you about 8 cool segments. You guys ready? 8 of them. These are all billion-dollar markets, in my opinion. Not that I'm opinionated or anything, but I am. So here they are, 8 of them. Ready? So they spell the word DISC, D-I-S-C. The first ones are drones and domes. So my opinion, we're watching a massive onslaught of drones, ground stations being built in every city around the world. They all have thousands of drones that can deliver packages, goods, bags, everything. What about anti-droning? How do we protect terrorist activities via droning? How do we intercept those drones, manage them, and create domes over physical facilities, extending the cyberspace into the sky? In my opinion, someone's going to win that. There's a number of Israeli cyber companies that are absolutely amazing. 1 or 2 German, a couple in the US. 7 vendors, in my opinion right now, have a shot at it. Someone's going to win $1 billion prize. Whoever builds cyber domes for drones is powerful. The I is all about industrial, which Galena can tell you all about. Someone's going to build an industrial firewall, deep packet inspection tool set, protect safety and security in this domain, and they're going to win. Greenfield, blue ocean. IoT areas. So I talk to IoT quite a bit. I'm a part of Forescout, which has already been a $1 billion plus company, just essentially creating visibility of IoT on standard IP networks. And of course, Clarity's doing it on OT networks. But the idea of industrial and IoT, everything from managed services to threat protection, vulnerability management around that domain, smoking, somebody's going to win, and they're going to win big. The S stands for satellite and social. My opinion right now, 1,536 orbiting NEO and LEO satellites. Now everything you have is connecting from ground to satellite. Everything is infrastructure of importance. I sit on Delta Airlines board, 2,800 aircraft, all connecting up, not down now. Everything that we have is strategically important to talk to the satellite. Constellations around the world are under attack. Whoever builds a SIM for satellite, DDoS protection, Node Akamai, as well as encryption and authentication and a whole platform for satellite protection will win in a major way. It's the next network in the sky. Social networks, whoever can deliver privacy and protection for the 83 networks out there, or digital hubs, 3.8 billion people online. If you can solve anonymous activity, content integrity issues, malicious pages across social domains, you're going to win. You're going to win big, both consumer and enterprise in that domain. My humble opinion, the C's. Obvious areas to me is the home consumer. So I think about the home digital router, which is the attack vector for most corporations right now. If you can provide a secure router, a secure solution, and a secure home, you're not only preventing major attacks to enterprises, you're protecting major consumers. That market's going to be won by somebody. The other C in DISC is the whole crypto area. Cryptocurrencies, blockchain infrastructure, key management, policy management around what now is probably the biggest breach area in all of cyber. Almost $1 trillion stolen through Coinbase, Bitcoins, and all the other cryptocurrencies in the world. I don't know how many of you are focused on this area right now, but the largest single criminal breaches in the world right now are happening in the crypto environment. So who's going to win that? There's hundreds of service providers that are providing solutions right now for crypto environments, digital assets online. Not many solutions. Somebody's going to win it. There you go.
But I mentioned SAP Fireside.
Yeah, no, that's great.
You mentioned Blue Ocean.
In the immortal words of Jay-Z, I've got 99 problems, but I'm not going to finish the rest. You know, I mean, I'll take a different. Okay, give me a second though. I think the problems that I have are really wrapped around what are the core failings of security that have existed for quite some time, yet we've never been able to solve. I had a conversation earlier around application security, which accounts for 99% of all of the problems that we have, and we haven't figured out how to code or identify issues within code better. And so as a tech company, that is a significant concern for us. And we run every tool under the sun, and yet, you know, we still have 300 to 500 vulnerabilities post-release across all product lines. That's a significant issue. GRC, how do you manage vendor management, procurement management, onboard, offboarding? This stuff is not sexy. This is dirty. But these are the majority of the problems that will either retain employment or allow me to spend more time with family. That was a joke. Anyway, but the point is that there's some seismic problems that we have in the security industry that it's very difficult to create a company to solve because nobody's really been able to solve them. In the AppSec space, for example, there's only been a handful of companies, and I can't think of one that has been massively successful to really kind of lead that industry, even though it's a significant challenge. You look at GRC, that's been there. I'll just cram it down my throat. Look at GRC, thanks. Look at GRC, I mean, that's been not a great industry for anybody. And yet, how we manage security as a program deeply requires our ability to do these things. And of course, I'm not disputing the issues in regards to how we identify and prevent against drones, how do we drive the blockchain security at a crypto level. Coin is a little bit different, but OT is significant for anybody driving an IoT function. But those are new technology areas for the most part, and how we apply legacy security theory to them, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And so that's where the opportunities for new business, but that's not necessarily some of the areas that we desperately need to innovate in to create the foundation of the house that we're still fundamentally lacking.
So, I think GRC, the biggest challenge there is the incumbent is so massive and has such dominant market share that it's impossible to displace them. Because Microsoft Excel is the dominant GRC tool on the planet. But when I think about sort of what are the green fields that are out there, I think one of the ones that we're not really paying attention to is the evolution of the executive computing environment. And if we think about historically, companies thought about devices as being owned by them. And so all of our endpoint security is about the company owns your device, we're going to log on to your device, we control your device. And that's not a backdoor because it's our device. But we're headed into a world where the device is part of the human perimeter. And if companies still need to know that that device is secure, but all of the avenues that they have for collecting it create an opening for an adversary to also penetrate. When you look at so many of the breaches that hit companies, I love this because everybody can say, when you look at so many of the breaches that hit companies, and they can pick their favorite problem, because the reality is every breach sort of walks through half a dozen steps, but the lateral movement is almost always admin privileges. You get to an admin computer or an admin account, and now you can move laterally. Well, I don't want an admin to have root access on my phone. Me, I get root access on my phone. So I think there's a market opportunity for how do we make sure these devices are secure and trustworthy, that they can signal that to an enterprise to say, hey, you should trust this device. But at the same time, not open a back door for an enterprise that probably lags the user in adoption. Like I replace my phone every year, year and a half, my laptop every year. Trust me, my CFO does not want to pay for that. So it's, that's out of my own pocket. But the second one is I think we need to look at the real space and how information is affecting it. And so Waze is my favorite example of an Israeli company that has disrupted the social norms around the world. There are communities where nobody drives on the side roads in this community except for the people who know the community, because you know where those roads lead. Well, Waze changed that norm. And all of a sudden you have people who are driving 50 miles an hour down a residential street with blind curves, and it makes the residents not happy. So if anybody wants to build a company whose market is golf carts, autonomous vehicles, that will just drive very slowly up and down my road, I will be your first purchaser. But I'm sure there is a market there in disrupting some of the information symmetries that are being created by putting physical knowledge into the virtual world.
So what I find pretty interesting is the domain of medical devices, both the medical devices in the hospitals and the ones that are increasingly more so becoming part of our bodies. So if you think actually about the vast majority of medical equipment, rather MRIs, anything, they run on Windows XP, right? I mean, they have quite significant vulnerabilities. And so as hospitals increasingly get all of their records online, think about the possibility of actually shutting down a hospital and not knowing what you're going to administer to the patient because all the records are stuck somewhere on a computer because there was a ransomware attack. And that ransomware attack, impacted not just the regular servers, but all the MRI machines. That's one thing that I worry about because I want to be able to go to a hospital and actually get service. The other one is with all the new developments in technology, there are plenty of instances going back almost like 10 years showing how we can actually impact pacemakers and stuff like that. And so that's pretty scary because that actually impacts human life. And the insurance companies and the medical industry, specifically in the United States, is going to pay a lot of money for those innovations. So I think that's an area that's worth looking into.
There? Okay. That's great. I would love to say we have a company for that, but Medigate. So, sorry, it's my event. So, Israel. Israel is sometimes dubbed as a cyber nation, right? Not just startup nation, but cyber nation. It does have the highest concentration of engineers in the world. The IDF intelligence units are graduating thousands of experienced cybersecurity specialists. It's got a mature cyber ecosystem, so we've got local leaders like Checkpoint, one in the audience, or two, startups like Clarity, and we've got multinational R&D centers, SAP, Akamai, and excellent cybersecurity-focused VCs and angel investors. So you all live in America, not originally from America, all of you, but you all live in America. Why travel all the way here, you know, to horrible, horrible flights, you know? Why come all the way, sorry?
Especially if you're flying El Al.
He says, especially if you're flying El Al, you gotta turn the mic on. Why come all the way here, suffer the jet lag and the terrible flights? And you know, what are you all looking for here? What are you doing here? What's interesting in terms of security over here?
I'm not shy. So, I mean, Israel's brilliant. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I know I'm talking to a group of people that come here, but this is an amazing place. And I just love the energy, the effort that I see here, the innovation I see here. I mean, plus it's just a beautiful land too. I mean, Tel Aviv rocks. It's a beautiful culture, pragmatic. So all the reasons why you kind of, you know, just want to be here. But the best part is capitalism, engineering, you know, leading the world is just really impressive. But can you please get more Uber drivers? Holy shit, there's no Uber drivers anywhere in Tel Aviv, am I right? There you guys, I had to figure out how to use Get. Is that the app? Yeah, I'm like, all right, figure that out. And then do they know I'm an American and avoid me on purpose? Is that how this works too? I gotta figure out how to make that work. But listen, Israel's amazing. It's fun to watch it. I've been coming here 20 plus years. Watch Tel Aviv grow. I go all the way back to the CEO of Documentum. I bought a company up in Haifa. I've been involved with this sector for a long time. It's impressive to watch the growth, impressive to watch the innovation, and you know, it just keeps making you stronger. So it's fun to watch the startups, fun to watch the companies grow, and I'll be here a lot. I'm now involved with four cyber companies right here in Israel, and I think I want to move to Tel Aviv, right on the beach somewhere down there, so we're all set. Anyway, congrats building an amazing ecosystem here. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really simple. I am deeply, deeply passionate about security. I've been doing it my entire career. And I believe that this is probably one of the most significant challenges of my generation. How do we protect this new digital ecosystem or livelihood that we're all ushering into? And I know, and as a security practitioner, we can see each and every day we're about to fall off that cliff. And so I'm deeply, deeply vested in protecting them. And to that point, why I'm here is to find and see and discuss and interact around how do we solve that. And it's not done by one thing. I mean, Chris Noonan stood up many years ago with a silver bullet, you know, from ISS, and that will never happen. But how do we usher in ideas that are addressing technical problems, how they're addressing cultural problems and procedural problems that we all need to live with? Israel is fascinating. It's really a nexus of three different cultural things for me, maybe four. One, highly educated. Two, a culture of security that's bred in for various reasons. And then three, a culture of entrepreneurs, which I don't really see that anywhere else. But for me, that's why I believe that cybersecurity is so significant in Israel. Why we see so many companies come out of it is because it's part of the DNA. We don't see that in DC or anywhere else to that degree. We don't see it in the Bay Area to some degree. But here we do see it, and I believe it comes to the core of the DNA of the culture. And that's really important. And for me coming to Israel is to really have those discussions, find out what the innovative ideas are, how we can usher them in to solve the real root problems that keeps us from falling off that cliff.
That was great. My first experience with Israel was when I started my career out. I worked for the U.S. Air Force as an engineer, making the plane invisible to radar. It's a Joint Strike Fighter, and we had 20 nations that were helping out with that platform. And what I always noticed about the Israelis were there were only 2 or 3 engineers on the program, but they were so loud. As just a young lieutenant, I'm like, those guys they either know what they're talking about, or there's just culturally, it's both actually. But it's both. And I had just tremendous respect for the contributions that they made to that program. And that plane is going to be the most prolific weapon system that's going to defend the free world. And I feel like having had that mission early in my career and then going over to the dark side and capitalism and Wall Street, I sort of yearned for that again. And then I met this ecosystem, and it's here, and you can marry the two together. You can be a capitalist, right? At the same time, you can defend the free world. And that's what you all are doing. I quoted this because I'm really glad that you came up with that scape, because now I want to compare scapes. I have my guys are already scraping it back in the office when you made the announcement. And we have some holes, so thank you. But we announced this, we basically took the 3,000 companies that we track around the globe, and then we took another lens. We removed all the companies from the cyberscape that were not from Israel. And wow, I mean, we came, I was like, then I did the math here, which was how many companies per capita? How important is this one sector to them, right? Because don't give us credit for having 1,500 or 1,600 cybersecurity companies. We've got 330 million people, right? We're 6.8. And so when you do that math, you guys are like over-indexed by like 5 or 6 times compared to, it's a really important problem of protecting digital assets.
So I think you sort of asked two questions, right? One is, why are we here, and what is it that makes Israel special? So answer the first one, because every year in April I say, L'Shana Haba Yerushalayim, and I can't wait until the next year. So I have to come a little earlier. But I think what makes Israel sort of different is, the environmental surroundings here. Israel is a nation under an existential threat. Right? And that is something that Israelis grow up, that you internalize. You don't think about it consciously, but it changes how you're willing to tackle problems. Right? You're willing to take risks and have the chutzpah to solve a problem that everybody else says is unsolvable, because maybe you will solve it this time. And every startup founder needs to believe that they can solve a problem that other people, smarter people, harder working people, whatever it is, have failed at starting. Right? You have to have that to come in, especially into a field that's this crowded, and do something new. And that's functionally what you see all across the Israeli ecosystem, is people who say, look, it's a hard problem, but I'm willing to tackle it, I'm going to try something new, and I'm going to tell you that I'm doing something that nobody else has ever tried. But what you're really doing is believing in yourself and believing that you can succeed in a way that many other people don't, and you're willing to take those risks.
Yeah, for me it really comes down to the risk-taking. I mean, Israel is all about constraints. You're geographically constrained to a very hostile area. You're constrained in, the access that you have. And actually that's a great thing. Because when you're constrained, you can come up with great things. And that's part of the reason why I think, in America, it's actually harder to come up with those, with answers to those challenging problems, because the constraints are not there, and because the risk-taking behavior is very different. So, in my company, I've had the privilege of working with some of the most brilliant cybersecurity researchers and engineers in Israel, and I've just really come to appreciate the technological advantage that you guys have, and a lot of that is because obviously of the special training that you have. So from that perspective, again, you have to thank the constraints of the army. And the other one is the risk-taking. The risk-taking and just trying new things when other startups will not go for that. So I just, on a personal level, I've lived in like 7 different countries, and I absolutely fell in love with Israel when I first started coming here. So it's a good combination of social life when you can be in the office, taking calls with the U.S., North America until 11 p.m. And then you go out on Rothschild or, Dizengoff, have a drink with your friends and, have dinner at 12 o'clock, and then you repeat the cycle. So I think that for young people, especially that combination of the social component with the cutting edge of innovation is just absolutely brilliant. So just keep on doing what you're doing, and we'll keep on, investing and starting new companies in Israel.
Thank you very much. That was beautifully put. So we're going to start taking questions from the audience, invisibly. See? This is our new innovation here. So we've got a first question from Mr. Shai On. Shai was the co-founder and chairman of Fireglass that was recently sold to Symantec. And we were with Hugh Thompson at dinner a couple of nights ago. But Shai is asking you guys, how do you see the issue of data encryption in the cloud? Is the encryption keys management as a service considered important? What about the location of the encryption keys? Who wants to take that?
Hell yes, it's important. One, let's just get encryption on all cloud services. That's a start. And I'm a very strong, especially on B2B, but a very strong supporter of customer managed keys. Now, how that facilitates and do the keys chain up, sure, and how do you operationalize every encryption, decryption for data? How does that facilitate in the service? But I think this is kind of a no-brainer, right? Service providers, such as SAP, needs to implement mechanisms to encrypt and be able to support customer managed keys. There's really not much more of a conversation other than that.
I'm going to disagree with Justin, so we'll make it a great conversation. So I think that the encryption conversation is deep and nuanced, and we're going to try to tackle it, very briefly. There's encryption inside the data store, right? That SAP should obviously be encrypting every time they write to this. They need to control that. But the question becomes, okay, I'm giving to SAP, who's running for me several cloud services, like, here's my customer relationship database, and I'd like to encrypt it so you can't read it. But at the same time, I'd like you to provide all of these value-added services where you'll do record deconfliction for me, and you'll let me, when somebody moves, it's easy for me to search on it. And all of those capabilities basically compete exactly with customer managed keys. But if the customer has the key and the cloud provider can't, you are by definition limiting the value you can get out of your cloud providers. So I think while it's very important to understand who owns the data and how is the data going to be protected, ultimately, unless you're pushing your cloud provider down the stack into just infrastructure, it's very hard to be in a position where the customer truly owns the keys. Now, the customer should have transparency into all of those protection mechanisms.
Well, I think there's a difference between customer managed keys and zero-knowledge systems. And so the root statement that you made there is the service provider having the ability to encrypt and decrypt. So yes, I mean, if you're doing something more than just file storage, we're going to have to transact on that data. And let's push aside, the homomorphic encryption kind of attributes. Oh God, we'll get into that. But the point is that we do need to decrypt in order to transact on that data. But that doesn't mean that we're doing it outside of the confines at a process level from that customer managed key kind of perspective. There are abilities and mechanisms to do that so that a customer can revoke their rights to do that encryption decryption process and effectively rendering me inert. But it's striking that balance, and so I get it.
One comment I'd make, not technical, but I think of it this way, is when Shai, for you, I don't know how you're thinking about your go-to-market, but one thing I learned about cybersecurity is many companies, the intellectual property difference is measured in what I think of as inches, but the go-to-market models are measured in miles. So when you think about encryption and next generation homomorphic or cloud-based security encryption, you think about how do you go to market? Like, what killer bowling alleys can you find to really drive a business plan? And that's really the difference that I see in companies that are successful versus ones that are not. Then you think about these technologies, and you're like, where do I go to get the biggest total addressable market, and how do I execute on that for the least amount of cost? And whoever figures that out tends to win. And I can see the debate constantly, but I end up thinking about how do we go to all those cloud providers, get them to embed that security and that encryption component and win.
Let me ask you a question. Out of all the companies that have failed in security, what percentage failed because of go-to-market versus failed because of product fit?
Maybe Eric's better than than me, but I would just say 95+% of them failed because of go-to-market. It's up in that range. I don't know what the exact percent is, but I'll tell you a story quick. When I first got the FireEye, I was looking around at the market, and there was this company Damballa, this company Fidelis, this company Lastline. There was all these sandbox vendors at the time, and the products all looked relatively the same. And the difference was who could execute in that window, and who could execute a go-to-market model. And the difference between what we ended up with FireEye and all those vendors was we executed maniacally on the go-to-market model. And you can just see it's a big, big ratio. So whoever's in the room here, design your product the same way as you design your go-to-market model. Spend as much effort and energy on that as you do building your product, because it's worth it. And so as we talk about encryption or next generation technology, man, it's not all 3,000 vendors are going to make it. I can promise you that. Not all of them are going to become billion-dollar companies. That's it.
That just really begs the question, what are some of the best go-to-market tactics for cybersecurity vendors? Come on.
You put me on the spot, but I would tell you a well-balanced and multi-route to market. The greatest way I saw it was you got to attack all routes to market simultaneously if you can figure out, if you're going to win, and you're going to win big, which is why I come to play, is like you want to hit all routes. You want a service-led market. How can you get the services energies from the big four and the Mandiants of the world to recommend you, because they're coming in at the board level. I push clarity all the time. OT assessments, get in there and create risk assessments with industrial. You do that, the service inertia pushes you along. Then you got to have a high-touch field organization, talking ground level up. And then you have a telesales organization spreading the word constantly. Then you got to create a channel that's working with that telesales organization. And then you got to offload all that cost over to the channel. And whoever makes that model work wins the game. And so how do you think and design that? By geography. And I can tell you this, the VAR model works in the US one way, the VAD model works a different way in Europe. And you got to go country by country and what verticals and what geographies work. Make sure you map them well with what route. And it is a complex enigma to figure out and do right. Whoever gets that right wins the game. So, one man's view.
So I think one of the things that I see in startups is looking at how much of the work you have to do is the feature you're going to sell. So let's be honest, most startups have an idea. But to take your idea to market, you have to do all of this engineering work about how are you going to do your deployment model. And the less you can monetize the value that you're creating there, the harder it's going to be for you in your go-to-market strategy. I've talked to so many companies where they'll come in and they'll say, look, we have this great network technology, and I won't name who the vendor is, but it sits on your network, it builds a map of everything, and then when it sees an adversary, it'll do this step, because that's their feature. And I said, wait, you're going to build a map of everything on my network? Can I have that? And they're like, no, that's not our what we're selling. We're selling you this defensive feature. Like, if you're going, every piece of technology you build should be something that you can monetize. If you can't monetize it, you should be using open source, off the shelf, minimize your investment in that. And so that's part of your go-to-market is try not to do things that are not core to you as a business.
Yeah, maybe from my perspective, I think partnerships are absolutely key. And I think that as a startup, if you can identify what are the different verticals within the partnership ecosystem, that eventually will be competing with you, right? And instead of them building that functionality or that technology inside, if you can go and give them a piece of your technology that basically eliminates the need for them to develop that, I think that's a win-win.
Lena, take a second and explain what you did with your fundraising and why the partnerships were important. It's a lesson to learn. Honestly, I haven't seen it much.
Lessons to learn.
Just how to fundraise and how to create partnerships as part of the fundraising. I mean, it's an art form to leverage the go-to-market model. I give Colleen a lot of credit because she built a syndicate for investment that leverage go-to-market. So it's an important lesson.
Well, I think it depends specifically on the sub-vertical they're in within security. But for us, being in industrial security, obviously the industrial control system vendors were very important for that. And whether that's the vendors themselves or someone else in the chain, such as the consulting companies, you have to figure out what is it that they're missing to basically maximize their go-to-market in the vertical that they're pursuing. And if you can give them that piece, then that means that you're making them successful. You're allowing them to go to market with your technology. So in our case, in our latest round, we not only had partnerships, but we also got Schneider, Rockwell, and Siemens to basically invest as part of our round. And that just gave us unprecedented access to the market and validation. So whatever sub-vertical you're in within the cyber domain, think about who are the major players that can help you get to market. And then if you help them with their go-to-market, that gives you the best scale ever.
That's great. Eric?
First of all, congratulations, Colleen, on that round. I mean, it's pretty epic. And in terms of how it came together, I think it's going to be a prototype for the industry. We have we're in the process of signing up a client. You hadn't announced your round, kind of understood what was going on, and we felt like, as M&A bankers and advisors, that we have a bunch of strategic relationships where we could start to create these kind of Kuretsu syndicates, if you will, and potential customers and partnerships. I think you're going to see a few deals that follow yours in those footsteps.
Can I charge you for that?
I had the idea, but you hadn't announced your deal yet, so I don't know. We'll talk about it.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So we'll continue taking a couple more questions from the audience, okay? This one is quite long, but I have to read the whole thing. It's like a half a page on my 0.3 font here on this phone. So it's from Peter Mojica, I hope I pronounced that right, who is a CIO, CTO, CEO, visionary. Curious on where do you see blockchain fitting into the overall landscape for cybersecurity, specifically for securing, registering, tracking, etc. Sensitive IoT devices for the purpose of security. Also, what is our cybersecurity dependency on AI for anomaly-based behavior detection? AI has different twists, flavors, etc. Is it a real long-term solution for detection? Or is it just a more sophisticated virus pattern definition that we have to constantly change to keep up with the bad guys? If you can comment on both blockchain and AI, that would be great.
Do we get to fill out the bingo card for machine learning? Let me put that in there. So blockchain is a fascinating technology that is designed to separate people with money from it. We should think carefully. So when you think about blockchain, all that blockchain is, okay, it's a distributed ledger, and we have many distributed ledgers. It's write once. We have many write once ledgers. What it is a distributed ledger with no root of trust. It's designed for a large number of people who don't trust each other to create a distributed ledger. So if your market does not include all the people here don't trust each other and they're not going to trust a root of trust, blockchain might be the right thing, but otherwise, maybe look at another technology. So I'll answer the blockchain one. And I think for AI is another word for regression often, or more regression, sorry. Machine learning is regression, AI is more regression. And the way that you think about AI is about an expert system, and how can we take computers and have them do learning on existing patterns such that they can replace low-level human tasks. And when we look at the IBM QRadar report that everybody loves to cite, it says 54% of attacks have an insider component. And that attack means alert. So 54% of the alerts they raised were insiders. We know that that's not really how often insiders are malicious. Most of those were false positive. That's an opportunity for AI, machine learning, regression, heuristics, name whatever you'd like, for us to use automation to get humans out of the mind-numbing task of dealing with false positives. Because the most dangerous thing to us is false positives. Because the more that a human clicks and says, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake, when the real one comes through, that's fake, because that's what you have trained them to do. You expect out of your users what you tell them to do all the time, and so we need to be using better automated systems, whether you want to call it AI or machine learning, and it certainly helps to separate Yoav from his money if you call it that. What your real goal is to maximize the value that the humans are providing by offloading less valuable work.
So yeah, I think blockchain is interesting generally, but from a security standpoint, I really come down to maybe two potentials. How do you actually do open source pedigree in that completely untrusted environment, which is a massive problem? And two, supply chain. You have a little bit more trust in that supply chain, but still effectively, when you're looking at the nested suppliers and cars, for example, I mean, it's crazy. How do you get authenticity and that pedigree into that? Other than that, I really haven't come up with much. When we look at MLs, or artificial intelligence, supervised, unsupervised algorithms, you have a couple of different problems. And the first one is, if you want to apply it to something, let's use a very simple example. Our network logs, operating system logs to identify bad things. You really have to create it yourself, because the first problem is you need training data. And you need to have tagged training data in order to feed, to create the algorithm that is based upon your activity. So purchasing an algorithm from a vendor is very, very difficult, because their training data that they've gotten is not necessarily indicative of your network and your environment, which is why they always do unsupervised or anomaly detection. That is their ML algorithm, but that's not as useful, because that's not telling you it's a security problem, it's just an anomaly. And so you see these companies, and we're one of them, that is actually taking our data over time, creating our own algorithms to identify it. Why are we doing that? We pump through 32 gigabytes a day, and there's no human staffing that I could do that will scale to the amount of logs, false positive, true issues that we have, ever. It's just never going to happen. Unlike Bank of America, I don't have unlimited budget. And so to that point, I need to find a better way of doing it. We see, not as a silver bullet, but potentially to get scale, I can apply a supervised algorithm to that problem to actually get wider scalability, smaller false positive rate in very focused areas and issues that we truly need to deal with. The other challenge is that takes years to develop. A first algorithm is probably in a year to get you 50-60% efficacy. Getting into 90-95, you're looking at 2 to 3 years. So companies having the ability to have data scientists, also the ability to employ technology to support those data scientists, is very, very rare. And so I see it as an amazing potential. Is it something that's going to scale and we're going to see a product? I don't know. I don't really see it.
I'm going to disagree with Justin just a little. Here we go. You ready? Who wants $1 billion? I'm going to give you $1 billion plus idea. This is in my own mind. Here it comes. Ready? So one of the greatest threats in the world right now that I see is the insider threat, right? So think about why the insider threat's so real. The insider threat is made real because we have absolutely zero trust of employees and contractors that access our systems today, made worse by the massive espionage activity we've seen with human intelligence penetrations into the most critical companies in the world. So what we can't discern anymore is who actually is a good employee and who's a bad employee. And how do we eradicate some of the bad employees? This could be radicalization of terrorism inside the company. This could be hacktivism. This could be all kinds of espionage activities, crime activities, and we can't track it. So here's what I need. I need a database of advanced human analytics that does machine learning, that gives me a reputational score that enables me to score every employee that I'm about to hire, every employee that's currently working at my company, and every employee that's about to leave my company. Because I want to be able to successfully onboard those employees to make sure they don't create additional risk for me. So I want to be able to understand what their social presence is. I want to understand what their past has been. Oftentimes we see two perfect resumes coming in. They present a problem and a challenge to the company. And we want to understand how to make sure we can onboard, offboard, and keep on board the right people in our company. This is a massive data problem, in my opinion, going to be probably solved by some sort of ML-based technology or AI-based technology. So there's my idea.
So I'm just going to say, if you decide to take Dave's advice, your very first hire needs to be a German lawyer who specializes in GDPR.
Just sell it in America, you'll be all set.
You creeped over into the insider threat problem. And I agree, it's a massive problem. But I would add another one in there. Customers are also being fed into the mix. So you have employees, contractors, customers, partners. The entire ecosystem of the business is being targeted depending upon what that company does, how they facilitate it, telecom carriers, the whole list goes on. When we look at employees, very rarely does a nation state employ an active spy to become an employee of a company. They extort, typically, while it might have happened,
right there.
while it might have happened, the large proportion of insider threats are extorted individuals. And that's very difficult to weed out from a hiring perspective. And so a very large proportion of individuals are going to fly in onboarding, and then they're going to be extorted from family in certain countries. They're going to be extorted because of lifestyle or other issues, but the attacker already knows what that individual has access to. So the behavior analytics can help in some areas, but because it's such a surgical attack on who that individual is and what they have access to, the downloading of data and other signals that we might get might not necessarily hold true. In other areas, such as customer landscapes, we do very rudimentary DMV screening. We need to do a lot better developing an insider threat program to weed out customer partners as well as contractors and the like. I think there's a lot of value there because those are going to be directly from that, just using nation state as an example.
Well, I think we can move to the next problem.
No, you got to join the Disagree with Justin Club.
I just putting privacy aside for a second, right? I think that it doesn't serve us well to think about in either or, right? So I think that even if we don't have the perfect solution that gives us the perfect answer to the reputational problem, if there's anything that improves the current situation by 10%, right, then there's probably an application for that company. If you can make the algorithm and the technology get that to 50, 60%, even better. So I think that when it comes to AI and machine learning, there's huge applications across everything for that. And everything will be incremental. I don't think that we can expect miracles there. When it comes to blockchain, at least as of today, I am not sure there are any practical applications of the blockchain technology to security as of today. That doesn't mean that things are not going to be different next year, but way too much hype in blockchain when it comes to security, way too much.
Can I agree with you? I agree with you.
I want to soapbox on the insider threat because I think you guys are all wrong. The insider threat is massively overblown. And I say that as the CSO of a company that has one of the five individuals, one of five, prosecuted under the Economic Espionage Act in the United States. Five that have been prosecuted. I was very careful there. I've got one of them. I've had insiders before, but the attitude that says insiders are a massive problem leads to security teams who say, I'm a superhero and I'm going after these villains who are our employees. And that is a dangerous model to be in. At best, we are sidekicks to our business, right? We're more like Ron Weasley than Harry Potter, right? We're the one who follows along and helps out and tries to keep safe. But if we say, oh, we don't want you to hire people, and especially if we use AI to do it. All the evidence we currently have for AI when it's applied to human populations is that it makes discrimination worse, not better. Right? So if we put in AI and we asked it to be predictive, you can get to the microphone in a moment, right? But we have to be very careful about that, about how we do that so that we don't further target populations that are horribly underrepresented.
No, I agree, but I look at it a little bit differently from an employee perspective. Because I believe the majority of those situations are employees that are being caught between a rock and a hard place. They're being extorted for various reasons. I'm looking at how can I help people How can I identify an employee that needs assistance and make sure there's a mechanism that they know that they can reach out and receive it? And it's very difficult to cast wide assumptions without black and white proof, and these are those situations. But how do you create a mechanism that allows an employee to know that if they are in those situations, they have an opportunity to reach out and we can support them? And that's really part of the Insider Threat Program that I see.
Final word on this. I'll give you a real life example. So a Fortune 500 company deployed a Israeli Special Forces group to evaluate 83,000 employees at a company I know. They discovered 42 employees that were arrested by the FBI and prosecuted. These 42 employees were radicalized in some way, shape, or form, either through espionage, crime, or terrorism, and they were eventually prosecuted out of the company. So these are real life situations. Now 42 and 83,000 isn't a giant percent, but it's more than 5. And so what I keep finding is with this culture and this society that we're in, the insider threat risk has risen, and we need tools and techniques and protection with privacy, I understand, but it's a pretty interesting area of solve. Just automating internal network controls to look at user behavior or some sort of capability is one facet of that, but there's other facets too that are very important to control. Anyway, an idea for everybody.
So this has been yeah, you get the last word. That's been a fascinating conversation, and we do have more questions on our LinkedIn page, but unfortunately we have run out of time. But really, I'd like to thank you so much, all of you, for coming here and speaking to us.